Welcome back to Legacy NFL Live. This is Frank, GM of the Rams. Joining me tonight is the commish, Jesse. Buddy, how are you?
Hey Frank, I'm doing good.
All right, sounds good. I know everybody over in the league has been aching for a season preview. We're on the eve of kickoff here, the Thursday night game to kick off the season. I'm excited. You excited?
I could not be more excited. I've been counting down the days literally for a couple months now. So
All right, cool. Well, then we're gonna do a division by division breakdown. I got the page here up on MFL. I got to be honest, I haven't looked at the teams thoroughly yet. I'm kind of gonna do this, kind of impromptu here to give my best interpretation of what's going on in the league, and we'll analyze these rosters and give some predictions. Okay.
sounds good. And I've
Uh
Frank, I know you're a fan of Colin Coward. I'm a pretty big fan of him too. And
huh.
one thing that he does that I kind of like is his 3-word game. Have you
Uh
ever
huh.
seen one of those? Yeah, that. So I decided to do a little 3-word game for each of the teams too,
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
I can
That
break out with that and we can
Love it,
work from
love
there.
it, love it, love it. Okay, do you want to do that at the beginning or at the end?
Yeah, let's do it at the beginning, then we can kind
All
of
right.
discuss it from there.
Let's start with the Buffalo Bills. What's your 3 words for the Buffalo Bills?
3 words for the Buffalo Bills are powerhouse moves north. Not that far north, but a little bit north.
All
And
right.
I think, the big thing there is obviously when you look at this roster, it looks shockingly similar to how the Giants roster probably would have looked about this time had he kept the Giants. So Anthony's built a real powerhouse, and it's the same old Anthony team. It's a little lean, 40 players, but he's got killers at every position, and he's got enough depth to work around bye weeks and all that. I think he'll be as good as ever.
Yeah, this team is a powerhouse. I mean, Jalen Hurts, a quarterback. Look at those running backs with Gibbs and Jacobs and Swift. This guy is going to be a terror in the AFC. Receivers don't get much worse, really. Don't much,
Nope.
not much better than that. Loaded tight ends. He's got 2 big ones, and the defense is as solid as can be. This is a juggernaut. There's no doubt about it. I think the AFC is on high alert already as it is. I think with Anthony, it's interesting because he's always put together these great teams. And a lot of times, like a lot of us do, don't get me wrong, he gets hit by injuries late, and oftentimes that kind of derails your season. I know it's happened to me, but with Anthony, the last couple of years, he seems to stay pretty healthy. That's why he's made a couple of great runs into title games, and at the very least, getting to conference title games. But usually he gets to the title game, to the Super Bowl in this league, and I think it's absolutely loaded. And I think I don't even think we need to reveal the other 3 teams in this division. This division is to lose really at this point. So I think only
Injury.
injuries can derail this team. To be honest.
Plus, Anthony has his backup quarterback, and even if it's just Kenny Pickett, at least it's somebody he can plug in if he needs to.
There you go. That's interesting. That's interesting because I know a lot of guys don't carry their backups. I don't think Anthony has traditionally, but he's got it, and I think that's a great security blanket because his team is so strong that he could actually win the entire league just in case Jalen Hurts were to go down. I don't know what else there is to say. He's loaded at defensive line, loaded at linebacker, loaded at corner. This is a monster team, an absolutely monster team. It's probably going to lead the league in scoring this year, and then it's going to come down to, as usual, injuries and playoff performances, because I've always said about these fantasy leagues, there's really 2 different seasons. There's a regular season, and then there's the playoffs. The playoffs is all about being healthy and getting hot. And that's why sometimes the best teams don't always win the league title, but that's how we use metrics of judgment to determine the best team. So, yep.
Exactly.
All right, 3-word game for the New England Patriots.
All right. So obviously, the 3 words I have for them is possible sleeper cell. And what I mean by that is I think this team's actually quite a bit stronger. I know that the GM of the Patriots doesn't really talk all that much in the chat, just kind of posts his free agency moves and all that kind of stuff and keeps moving. But I think this is a little bit stronger team than people give him credit for. He's got a lot of really popular picks as far as some of these guys you see hyped like Josh Palmer, Romeo Dobbs. He's got Zach Moss and Rico Dowdle, both at running back. I think a lot of people are betting on them to have pretty good years. I think they could actually be pretty dangerous, and I think they might be the second most dangerous team in this division. And of course, nothing to the Bills, but that might be a wild card team this year. I think they really could be.
Yeah, he always puts up a good team. Very quiet, but always puts up a good team. He'll make the playoffs here and there every year, and is always competitive. You got to give him credit. I think this team, um, it's solid. It's balanced. I definitely wouldn't call it a powerhouse, but good enough in this division to at least a battle for second place right now, and possibly with 3 wild card spots. I think a good shot at a wild card spot. I think Randall here is well. I think he's on his way here to at least battling this year. So without a doubt. Okay, good. Let's go to the New York Jets. 3 words for New York Jets.
So 3 words for them. We got Lamar's Immortals Charge from the movie Tombstone, kind of reference. And the real thing with them is I think they've got Lamar Jackson, and then I think we've got a rebuilding roster with a whole lot of guys that could be something, but I don't know if they're guys that are going to step up and win you weeks on a week-to-week basis. So obviously, this team's going through a rebuild, not quite ready to win anything, I think.
Yeah, agreed. I think there's some good young talent here, needs to develop. I love the addition of Jermaine Burton there and a few other guys. Jonathan Brooks, even the rookie he drafted there, is still hurt right now. Going to need time to get back. It's a rebuild. I haven't looked at his picks yet. I'm sure he has a ton of picks right now for the future. And I think this was the right way to go with this team. I think after the previous owner surrendered it, it was kind of an in-between state, somewhat competitive, but at the same time, not enough firepower to really compete in this division. And so I think, he's got this team going in the right direction. That's what you want to see. I mean, every year is different in these leagues, and you're going to have teams that are competing, running for titles like we see with the Buffalo Bills, other teams that are more, shooting for a wild card or playoff spot. And then you got these rebuild teams. They just have to happen. And with the newer owner here of the Jets, you got to respect that. You got to give him time to build it,
Definitely.
All right,
yep.
great.
And actually, on a quick second look on this, they actually have some better defenders than I gave them credit for. So, that's a defense that could step up and possibly win them a couple more weeks than you think, too.
Yeah. I mean,
a lot of good players there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's always possible with 3 wild cards, I think, to a team that has a strong defense can and your schedule lines up properly, you could always sneak into the wild card. I've seen it before. And really what we saw last year in Legacy with the Falcons, really winning all of Legacy last year. And while Andy puts up a great team, I didn't think that was a traditional championship team in Legacy, but it goes to show you, and I've preached this all the time to a lot of these young GMs that come to me for advice. I said, just get your team in the playoffs. You never know what happens in the playoffs. It's crazy.
Amen.
Yep, there you go. So, all right, 3-word game for the Miami Dolphins.
So those who are on Twitter will probably recognize this one, but I put Bugatti carport meme. And that is, it's a meme of this Bugatti that's sitting underneath the carport of a trailer. And, people use it when there's kind of a 1 or 2 superstars on a team that's otherwise not really built to, kind of go the long haul. I think that's what we're looking at here. I know, Royce is the new GM of this team. I think there's still work to just tear down some a little bit. I know he's tried to trade Kupp and tried to trade McCaffrey. Those are the Bugattis, and I think they probably need to move if this team is going to rebuild and kind of become a little bit deeper and more competitive, more well-rounded in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely a team that's heavy. It's got a couple of great superstars. I would, listen, whatever you get for McCaffrey at this point, and ironically enough, I just traded him in the third league. I got a good package for him, but that's not the point. That's probably the most valuable. You're going to look for a rebuild. I think you're going to look for a competitive team that's going to want him pay you a pretty good price for him. If Cooper Kupp is healthy, I think Cooper Kupp can still be a monster. And so that 1-2 punch is pretty good. Those tight ends are all interesting, but one of them needs to step up. I don't know if that's going to happen because they're in crowded tight end fields, all of them. And so he's got a quarterback. You just wish this had 1 or 2 more pieces on offense, and you wonder what could happen here. Defensively, it's not too bad. Gregory Rousseau, Josh Sweat, Kayvon Thibodeau, good defensive ends, solid defensive tackles with Jeffrey Simmons there. Linebackers, of course, are looking. Well, he needs one more at least. I mean, I think if Devondre Campbell was healthy, Logan Wilson. But corners need to be addressed pretty bad, and that's one of the easier positions. Yeah, I think you're right. I just think lots of big pieces, too many holes to win this year. So.
Yeah, especially corner there. That's tough taking a 0 weekly. Hopefully that gets addressed pretty quickly.
So. Yeah, hopefully it does. Okay, give me your predictions 1 through 4 or 4 through 1.
Yeah, 4. I think I'm going to put the Jets 4, and that's no fault of theirs. It's just not quite ready to win the division, I think. I'll take Miami 3rd. New England I'll put 2nd, and then I think the Giants have earned the 1st spot.
The Bills, you mean, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, the Bills.
No, I got you. It's confusing. Yeah, I'm going to say the same. Jets 4th, Dolphins 3rd, Patriots 2nd, Buffalo Bills 1st, and like I said, I think Anthony's team is going to be a handful in the entire conference. So there you go. Okay, let's go now to the AFC West. Let's start with this. I was about to say San Diego Chargers, but the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay, 3-word game. Yes. What do you got?
3-word game for them. I got extended darkness retreat. Our boy Aaron Rodgers on roster. I happen to be a really big fan of Bo Nix. I think he's probably going to be a good quarterback for this team for a while. But I think the Chargers have not really scared anybody when they've come up on the schedule for the last couple of years. I don't think they're going to do that this year, even if they do have Hill and Nix. I think there's going to be a lot of zeros weekly in this team, or at least close to it, just a couple points from a lot of players that'll be starting. I wouldn't be scared of them personally.
Yeah, there's lots of holes here. There's only really one starting receiver on the roster. I don't think Van Jefferson is going to start. I don't think McCaffrey is going to start. You need at least 2-3 more receivers on this roster. I do like Zach Cabonet on, that's how you pronounce it, Seattle. I think he'll get split time, but should get some points over there. I just think you got to move Aaron Rodgers in the deal. You got to go get a package for him right away. I know he's $19.5 million. It won't be easy to move, but it can be done if you get creative with contracts. After that, tight ends, he's got a few pieces. We'll see if Greg Dulcich can actually stay healthy and finally live up to some of the hype. But there's just not enough on offense. Defensively here, I'm looking at this. Lots of young guys. I like to see that. Drafted a lot. That's fine, but they're going to need time to develop. Not enough of an impact on the defensive line, not enough impact at linebackers, unless that Ventrell Miller really develops, which I've heard good things. So maybe there's some potential there. Corners, okay, he's got a handful there. A couple of those guys will work. Safeties, all right, fine. There's some bits and pieces, but not enough. I think if he wants to be competitive this year, got to move one of those quarterbacks. And I do love Bo Nix, and so the future looks bright for the Chargers if some of these rookies and his future sort of transactions go his way. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's not enough to really challenge this year. All right, let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Give me your 3-word game there.
So I've put CDs lack B-side. And what I meant by that is, again, the Chiefs have been a really strong team in this league for a couple of years now. I think this is sort of one of the lighter rosters we've seen from them. I think especially at receiver, you look at that and, you've got CeeDee Lamb and, where is his B side? Where is his 2 receiver? There's nobody really that's starting on their team that's going to make a big impact there. The rest of the roster, as always, is really solid. But that's really scary from when you look at these top teams and you look at the teams that you're thinking might compete for a championship in the league. They start with having 4 to 5 excellent receivers, and I don't think the Chiefs have that this year.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Though he seems to be pretty loaded at running back with Etienne and Henry. I'm not sure what kind of a role Perina's going to have in Kansas City, Dalvin Cook in Dallas. Interesting, but you're right. Not enough receivers on this roster other than CeeDee Lamb, and he's suspended. How many games is CeeDee Lamb suspended? Do you know?
Let me click in here and see.
because that's going to be a big factor too if he wants a kind of look at a possibility of a wild card or playoff shot. But I mean, regardless, he doesn't even have CD to start the year according to MFL. He's got an
Yeah.
S next to his name. Tight ends. Darren Waller retired on him. I'm going down here to the defense here. Okay, he's got some defensive tackles, got some decent defensive ends, got some decent linebackers, even though Shaquille Leonard, I think, is not playing right now. I think he retired or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he's done.
Yeah, I think he's done. Too many injuries. Listen, defense is okay, but just not enough on offense. Let's talk about this for a second because he is loaded at running back. Okay, so
Yeah.
I guess the point here is if the Chiefs can make some maneuvers to address some wide receivers and pick up some wide receiver twos or even some wide receiver threes with a decent defense that he has and those two running backs, is it possible that he makes a run?
I think so. I mean, and Corey's a good GM too, so he's going to be looking for a trade if he needs to address that. If he starts seeing that he's getting, 2 points out of his last 2 offensive slots every week, I think he is going to make some moves. So, I mean, it's certainly not over for the Chiefs by any means, but I think there will be some trades that need to happen if he's going to win the championship.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to Daniel Jones too. I think this running game
True.
is strong, and I don't even think he needs wide receiver ones and wide receiver twos. Even if he added a couple of wide receiver threes, it would go a long way in this division. It's a tough division, don't get me wrong, but at least to try and earn a wild card spot. We'll see what Corey does, okay? So now let's move on to the Los Angeles Raiders here, and this is Brian here, right?
Yes, sir.
Give me your 3-word game.
So I've got all on Pitts, and I think that's a scary phrase to hear for any fantasy owner that has had Pitts on their team. And the reason I put that is I think that this is a really good team, and I think that if Pitts plays like Kyle Pitts should play, they could be a really, really dangerous team. I think they have good starters everywhere. And I think that, to really get to that next level, I think if you get 200 points out of Kyle Pitts this year, this is an excellent roster. It's not the deepest roster, but I think they have quality starters at every position. I think they're going to get good points from everybody who is going to be playing. And Brian he'll make a trade too if he he doesn't have any picks left, but I'm sure he can get creative with it and make some trades too. He has some cap for once, so I like this team.
Yeah, this is an interesting team. I think looking at it, I think he's good at QB with Cousins, good at running back. Wide receivers could probably stand to use another wide receiver 2-3 type without a doubt. Kyle Pitts, you're right. Defensive line is okay. I think a linebacker here is going to be desperate need here. Chris Barnes, I believe, is gone, got cut, retired, or something. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong on that. But a linebacker would help here. Another corner for depth, and I mean, this is possible. He could put it together with a move or two. He's got the cap. We'll see how it goes. Denver Bronco, Kevin's team. Kevin's teams are always very interesting. Give me your 3-word game.
Yeah, and to that point, my 3 words for them was I keep looking. And the reason for that is because I couldn't really think of a good 3 words for this team because there's a lot to look at here, and there's a lot that could go right and a lot that could go wrong. I mean, it's not blue chip guys. It's Roschon Johnson. It's Darius Slayton. It's guys who are interesting. Jalen Tolbert on offense. It's these kind of guys who are interesting but haven't really put it all together. I like quite a few players on their defense. Jermaine Johnson's a monster. Trayvon Walker, I think, could even take another step this year in the right direction and provide some really good week-to-week points. Again, corner, you could use some depth, but I keep looking at this roster, and I kind of do every year with Kevin's teams. I always think they're going to be just a little bit better than they end up being. It just seems like stuff kind of falls apart a little bit sometimes on Denver. But I like the roster. I think they could be really dangerous. I think they could challenge the Chiefs if some things go right.
Yeah, I think so. It's an interesting roster. It looks like to have a lot of running backs there that at least produced last year. If those running backs can produce again this year, those big 3, I think the addition of one more wide receiver would make it very interesting without a doubt. I think this team will compete. I think right now built better than the Chargers, and I think built a little bit better than the Raiders as well too. Um, I'm just wondering here, I'm just kind of looking up and down this division. It's a strange division because I don't see
Yeah.
a team that's absolutely complete. It's almost as if all four teams have pieces missing. In the case of the Chargers, they have a lot missing. And so, okay, so here's the question. How do you see this division breaking down?
So I think we both agree 4 will be the Chargers.
Yeah.
3, this is really tough for me. Like you said, I mean, you could almost put these 3 teams in any order, but I'm going to put them Broncos 3, Chiefs 2, and I'm going to take Raiders 1. I think they'll take it.
You think the Raiders would take it? That's
I'm
very
taking the Raiders.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, you know what? I'll go with that as well too. I think that's a fair analysis. I think those 4 teams, they all have partial strengths and partial weaknesses, and we'll see which ones kind of how it all plays out at the end of the day. All right, let's move on now to the AFC South. 3-word game for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, there's a lot of youth on this team, and the 3 words I chose for this was just nice job, Ryan. Again, I don't think the Texans will be a championship team this year, but this roster looks entirely different than it did, a year ago even. So, I mean, just kudos for bringing some really good players in to kind of score some points on a weekly basis. Tony Pollard's a good example of that. He's not going to be on this team all year, I'm sure. Ryan will probably move him for a nice return to somebody who needs a good player. I think there's a lot of players like that, and I'm pretty happy with the job Ryan's done. I think the Texans will be on the up and up very soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. From drafting Caleb to the running backs, Tony Pollard, I think Chase Brown is going to have a big role in Cincinnati. That could be a nice 1-2 punch. Brandon Ayuk is finally in camp. Troy Frank was a solid pickup. Marvin Harrison he was number 1, right? Draft pick number 1 overall. And so it's very, very interesting, very young. I think it's still the offense is a little shallow for this year, but I actually like this team better than some of the other teams we previewed already who haven't gone young. That's what the interesting thing about it. Just scanning down the defense here. Okay, defensive tackles. He's got a bunch of bodies there. Defensive ends. Gardock is pretty decent. And linebackers, interesting there. Some veterans there come through. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a decent roster. Obviously, it's not overly strong, but, it's going to be interesting to watch. You got to give him a little bit more time. He's gone young with this team. I think it's in the right direction, and that's what you want to see. So there you go.
Yep. There was so little talent before and very little picks, and now he's got Williams and all these guys who should progress well. Plus 3 picks in the next draft in the first round. And 6 second-round picks.
Yeah, he's putting it together without a doubt, and so I think you got to keep in mind what phase every organization is in, and here we have an organization with the Texans that's ascending through youth. That's usually the best way to build teams, unless you're a very proficient trader. And so we'll see. We'll keep an eye on Ryan's team here. All right, Indianapolis Colts. This is Daryl's team. Give me your 3-word game.
3-word was work league offense. And what I mean by that is if you drafted this offense in your work league or your home league, you'd be pretty happy with that. And I think that is pretty impressive in a 32-team league. I think this is one of the better offenses, in the whole league on paper. I love it. Pacheco, I love Javonte Williams. I'm a fan of him, even though, he's coming off the injury. I think 2 years removed from it, he'll be a force. Nico Collins, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Amon-Ra St. Brown. That is deadly. Those guys could put up a ton of points every week. And on defense, it's the same story. They've got TJ Watt and Brian Burns at defensive end, and the rest of it's just as good. So I really, really like the Colts. Obviously, they were the AFC champions last year, I believe. So, that'll be a dangerous team to play.
What's interesting here? Not only is he loaded on offense, I mean, Daryl has done a great job on the offense. I remember when he went into RFA about, 2-3 years ago and was at the time a really high, expensive bid on TJ Watt and RFA. And I'm like, Daryl, you're crazy. You're crazy paying TJ Watt $8.4 million. I think the league was still $100 million back then. And he gave up a first, I believe, in RFA after TJ Watt. You know what? It was the absolute right decision. I mean,
Yeah.
to get 380 points from a defensive end and the
Unreal.
$8.4 million now looks minuscule compared to the production that TJ Watt brings. And you look at this defense. I mean, you look at those linebackers, and even that KJ Britt may step up this year. You look it up and down the bottom. I think he may need another safety just for depth purposes. But this is a solid team. It's going to score a crap load of points. I mean, those receivers are absolutely insane, actually. At least 4, right? So, and then he's got, Jared Goff, who's steady Eddie, who put up points. This is a nice team. It's going to challenge for a division title. So,
I think so too.
All right, let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is Shane's team. Give 3-word game for this one.
So I put defense wins championships. And reason for that, I actually really like their defense. I think there's a lot of good players here. It's not quite, it's not quite the Colts defense, but I think there's a ton of good players on this defense. The issue is with offense. I mean, you really have Calvin Ridley, and it's light. I mean, there's not a whole lot of offensive talent on this, but the defense is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And people underrate that when you look at a team, and I know I'm guilty of this. I look at an offense first and foremost, and I try to make a judgment based on that.
Yeah,
I think the Jags will put up more points than people think. Think.
Oh, well, I think he needs the development of Adonai Mitchell and A.T. Perry. He's got to have those two guys step up. If those two guys step up, then it's something else. I think what's disappointing is, of course, the Raiders, moving on from Mayer as their primary tight end over there. Michael Mayer was a high pick. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be a big part of the offense. I think that kind of hurts there in a way. He's got young talent that needs to just step up. Darnell Washington, Michael Mayer is going to be tough. But like I said, Adonai Mitchell, A.T. Perry, it's young on offense. And if these guys develop fast, he may have a little bit more than what we're kind of thinking right now. Defense is solid. I think Shane will win a few games here. But I agree with you. I think it's a proper assessment. A little weak on offense. Defense is solid. So we'll see. Let's go to Tennessee Titans. This is Ricky's team. Ricky's been with us for a very long time. One of the best GMs, back-to-back Super Bowl title winner here in Legacy NFL. He gets all the respect in the world here. Okay, 3-word game for the Titans.
Yeah, I was struggling on this one, but I just went with good luck, man. And I mean that to anybody playing the Titans, because this is a team that, when you look at it on paper, I don't think it's necessarily the best team we're looking at. They don't quite have the heavy hitters on defense that some of the other teams we look at have. But this is a team that, I mean, they could realistically drop 330 points on you in a given week with just the top end talent they have with Mahomes, and Kelsey and Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown. I mean, it's guys who can jump up and score 40 to 50 points by themselves. So, I mean, I think when you have that much talent at the top end, if you can just keep the rest of the roster average, I think you can beat anybody in any given week. And I think that's the Titans. So I think luck will play a factor when you play the Titans, because if those guys go off, it's going to be really hard to win.
Yeah, I like this roster. I think, Ricky, he's a gamer. I think he's probably looking across the conference, especially at the Bills, and going for the heavy hitters in order to try and challenge the Bills. I can see that right now. I think he got good news. James Conner is going to be the bell cow in Arizona. That's a big deal over there. Those receivers are tremendous. So A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jacoby Myers, Devonta Smith. That may be the best receiving unit in this league. If it's not the best, it's top 3 for sure. And then he's got 2 tight ends with Gordon and Kelsey as the best. This is a powerful, powerful offense. Any given week can just explode. I'm kind of scanning through the defense. Okay, he's got some serviceable defensive tackles. I think that needs to be improved to be a championship team. He's got some decent defensive ends. Linebackers, I think, could use an upgrade. That's going to be a problem. Corners got a bunch of rookies. That's fine. I like that Terrion Arnold. and
Yep.
safeties a little weak on the back end. So you're absolutely right. I think heavy offense, weak defense. But you know what? Making moves throughout the year to address defense is a lot easier than offense. It costs
No
less. I
doubt.
think it could be done. You know what I'm saying, Jesse?
Definitely.
All right, all right. So that's the division right there. Preview 4 through 1. Go ahead and call it for me.
So I'll go for Houston through no fault of their own. I think Jacksonville will just jump up and get a couple more wins on it in during the course of the season. Jacksonville, I've got 3. Tennessee, I've got 2. It's really just because of the defense, and then Indianapolis, I've got 1.
Yeah, that's interesting. You got the Titans that are just so loaded on offense, but Darrow's team, the Colts, they're much more balanced at the end. And so I'm gonna say Titans 2 and the Colts 1. All right, there we go. Let's move on to the AFC North. Let's start with Nate's team here, Baltimore Ravens. 3-word game.
Yeah, so I think this is a stronger Ravens team than we've seen in a while. But the 3 words I picked for them were "there's no backup," and what I mean by that is I think the front line. When you look at the roster you're going to go up against when you play the Ravens, I think it'll be a little scarier than it has been in the last 2 years or so. But I think that when injuries come, I just don't know if they have the guys to step up and kind of help out when need be. Uh, but I think they're going to have, again, I think they're going to have a really dangerous starting lineup. And I think that is pretty valuable. I don't know if they've had that lately. So I like the
Yeah,
Ravens, but could use some depth. It's going to
yeah.
score
I
points.
I think this is the best team Nate's put together since he joined the league. Kind of scanning
Agreed.
defense here. Yeah, he's got some solid pieces. This team is potentially a playoff team. My one concern, Kyron Williams of the Rams, and my concern is this: Sean McVay announced that he will be returning punts this year.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me, right? Does that mean Blake Corum is going to get a few more carries and they're going to use Kyron Williams a little less? I mean, the fact is, Kyron Williams out of college, the biggest critique was he was a small running back. I could definitely see more of a split carry situation. It'll probably be 60-40 in favor of Kyron. That's just something to keep an eye on there, right? That's all I'm saying. Maybe
Yeah.
65-35 because so we'll see what happens there. But overall, those receivers are pretty nice. Mike Evans there, of course, and Gabriel Davis should do fine over there. I think maybe one more receiver here could be used. But the 1-2 punch at running back with Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams should be one of the better running back tandems in the league. It's going to need a tight end to develop. Got a couple of rookies. If those tight ends don't develop, that's going to be tough. So, okay, good.
All right.
Bengals, 3-word game. What do you got?
I've got time Laporta needed. And what I mean by that is I think they've got a superstar in Sam Laporta, and I think they have a lot of young guys that they're hoping kind of step up and perform well. I think it's almost unfortunate you can't just freeze Sam Laporta for a couple of years and let the rest of the roster catch up to him because they're definitely in the beginning of a rebuild, and
Yeah.
Laporta is going to be the top scoring player on this team.
Yeah, I think so. Listen, I'll be honest with you. I think this is a total rebuild right now. Lots of young teams. You almost wonder if Laporta is wasting his fantasy career on this team. Maybe it's time to collect and continue to draft in the future. I don't know. I mean, that's up to the GM here, Tony. He's a smart guy. Tony does this in every league. He loves to build through the draft, and eventually, 4 or 5 years into this thing, he puts together pretty competitive teams. We'll see if we can do that. I know there's a lot of young guys on this roster that I like, and but it's not going to be a very good team this year. And I think pretty much it's probably going to be at the bottom. But we will see as we look at the other 2 teams. 3-word game for the Cleveland Browns.
I have got. Let me see. Okay, so for this sounds more negative than I mean it, but I put too many cooks. And what I mean by that is if I had this team, I would pick the wrong guys to start. They have 5 running backs that you're going to be tempted to start every given week, and at least one of those guys right now is going to have to sit. And I know I would make the wrong choice, so it would stress me out. Receivers kind of the same way. I mean, you're going to have to make some decisions on who to play, and Dan's as capable of anyone as making the right decisions there. but I mean, it's kind of a stressful roster to look at and just think about who you would start on a given run. But that'll probably play well over the course of the season as guys start getting hurt.
Yeah, he's definitely got depth, and I, like you, am terrible on game day decisions on who to play. So I totally get where you're coming from on that one. This team is just loaded, though. Let's be honest. Apart from that, it's absolutely loaded. It's probably the deepest team that we've seen so far in the conference, and probably the deepest team in the league. Listen, I consider Dan just a preeminent GM. He does this in every league that I've been with him. He's steady Eddie. He's focused. He understands value. He understands how the game is played. He rarely makes a mistake, and he just puts up one of the best teams in the league wherever he's at. I remember when he took over this Browns team, I think 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was a complete crap show, and he's really turned his organization around. I think right now he's right up there with the Bills and the Colts and the Titans as one of the best teams in the conference right now. So we will see. So, and finally, 3-word game for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
So this one's also a little mean. I apologize. This one was the Wyoming Steelers, because I think that Josh Allen's going to be in some comfortable territory here where he is the star of this team by a mile. And, there's some good players on defense as well, especially at safety. That's a nice safety group. But he does not have a whole lot of help on offense aside from an aging DeAndre Hopkins. They're not going to put up points on a weekly basis, I don't think, with the current setup.
Yeah, I think this is pretty ugly stuff, actually. I just wonder if it's almost time just to move on from Josh Allen, go get a package if you can. But that's up to every GM's discretion. I think it's going to be a long year. And so, okay, there you have it. Let's call this one 4-1. What do you got?
I'll take Steelers 4, Bengals 3, Baltimore 2, and Cleveland, I think, is the clear winner here.
Yep, I agree with you. That's what I got. All right, guys, that completes the AFC. Let's move on to the NFC. Let's start with the NFC South, the defending champion Atlanta Falcons. 3-word game. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm proud of this one. So I put worthy of love. They have both Xavier Worthy and Jordan Love on this roster. And honestly, I think they, at least right now, we do have the perception of the Falcons, like you said earlier, as kind of that wild card team who jumped up and won the Super Bowl with kind of an untraditional team. I think the team is getting more traditional as the offseason is worn on. I mean, they have a lot of really good players here that can, I think Worthy is an important part of this. I love Xavier Worthy, and I think he's going to play a really big role in Kansas City. If he does, and he gives, Andy a really good wide receiver 2 this year, sky's the limit.
Yeah, this is an interesting team. I like the young talent he brought in. I think the big question marks, I think he's solid with Jordan Addison and Xavier Worthy solid. I think he's got some question marks, though, with Quentin Johnson and Rashard Bateman. Those are 2 big question marks to me. Obviously, Terry McLaurin makes a nice third. So he's got the ability to sit and wait with those big 3 on those other 2. I love the addition of Blake Corum. Everything I'm hearing, they love him with the Rams. He's going to have a decent role this year, and he'll get some points as well, too. Ramondre Stevenson. I haven't followed New England too closely, but I'm sure he's still the number 1 over there. Let's see. We scroll down to the tight ends here. Cole Kmet should be fine over there. Adam Troutman may have a role. We'll see. Defensive tackles looking pretty decent there, pretty strong there. Defensive ends. Khalil Mack is a beast. He drafted Lailatu. Pretty nice. Bradley Chubb should be back. We're looking at linebackers, Jack Campbell, Bobby Okereke. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Whatever. Pretty decent there. I think another linebacker, though, he may need that there. Corner is fine. He's got some players there, and the safeties, he's kind of pretty good there. Yeah, this is a decent team, without a doubt. I think it's going to come down to if one of those 2 receivers, either Bateman or Quentin Johnson, can really take the next step, that would really help. But even apart from that, if he stays healthy, it's going to be very competitive, and I think it's definitely a playoff team in the NFC. All right, buddy, your Carolina Panthers. What do you got?
Yeah. Please stand up. I need some people to step up this year if I'm going to even be decent. I think I have tried churning this roster without blowing it up. I think I'm about running out of steam. Um, I have a lot of players I like, but I just need some guys to step up if I'm going to keep it going, or else I might have to engage in a short-term rebuild to kind of rebuild the bottom end of the team.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at your roster now. You definitely got a lot of players, a lot of young players, without a doubt. I like some of the young talent on this roster. You know what is interesting? I'm not sure. Compared to, and we'll see the rest of the teams. I know that your division is strong, but it's not a juggernaut division. That's the way I see it. Greg always puts up a solid team, and Andy puts up a solid team. Saints are in rebuild, and the question is, do you blow it up now when the division in and of itself, you could still potentially win, but I think, like you said, it's going to take a lot of your young talent developing. And to be honest, I feel for you because I feel my Rams team is kind of in that boat this year as well too. It's we'll see how it goes. The great thing about having a young team, if you do decide to strip it down at some point, it'll be a fast rebuild because some of these guys will develop, if not this year, next year. So we'll see how it goes. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's go to Saints here. New GM here. That's Steve. I don't know if it's first or second year for Steve. Do you know? You remember?
I believe it's his first.
First. Okay. What are your thoughts?
And he's done some work on it already. My 3 words for this one was weekly light breeze. And that is because Breece Hall is going to put up some points, and the rest will just sort of I think this is probably the weakest roster right now going into this year. It's Breece and it is Kittle. And then you've got some okay defenders like Stephon Gilmore kind of players. Steve is working on this one, but I don't think it's ready for the light of day as far as going out and winning games. But they have 6 first-round picks and a bunch of seconds, a bunch of thirds. This team is not meant to compete this year.
Yep.
They're taking a year to kind of get it all together. Fair enough. Excited to see where they take it.
Yeah.
He's a good GM. I like him.
Yeah, listen, I like the direction of the Saints organization because it floundered for many years. And you're right, loaded with 6 number 1s next year, 3 number 2s, and some 3rds and 5ths there. And he's already got young talent that I really, really like, on this roster as well, too, especially on defensive side. And so we got to just give Steve a little bit of time to develop this thing. But for this year, he's looking probably at the bottom division, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. Okay, and finally here, let me pull this up. The very last team here this is Greg's team. Greg's a veteran GM. Always battles every year. Give me your 3-word game here.
Yeah, so this one, my 3 words for this were age before beauty. And I think the reason for that is they have a lot of players that I think are kind of getting possibly a little long in the tooth, but guys that always still perform. So, Brandon Cooks, you see him and you don't think of an all-star player, but he puts up points every year and he's going to give you solid production. I kind of think that's what the Bucs are going to be this year. It's going to be solid production every week. I think they'll be one of those kind of teams that, they cap 200 more often than not and can knock you out if you're not, putting together or putting a good team on the field. But I don't know if they're ready to kind of push for a division title when the Falcons are around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at Greg's team now. I think he's got some very interesting pieces here, without a doubt. I like David Montgomery. She have a solid year. Again, the wide receivers, I like Courtland Sutton. She have a good year. Brandon Cooks. Demarcus Robinson is going to have one more good year with the Rams, I believe, as well, too. And then we'll see what else he gets there. Tight ends, Jonnu Smith. He'll get some production from Jonnu, without a doubt. Defensively, defensive tackles, got a bunch of rotational guys. Nobody really scares you. Defensive ends, that's really lacking there. Defensive end, linebackers, nothing great. Though he did get a break with the Ernest Jones trade. Christian Roseboom is going to start in LA. He'll be number 2 over there to start the year. Should get some production there. Corners, okay, fine. Got a few bodies, and safety, same thing. I don't think this is
Yep.
a terribly strong team. I think it's going to be a team that, like you said, it's long in the tooth. It will beat out the Saints, I think. But after that, it may be a long year, and we'll see. Let's call it, buddy.
Yeah. So Saints 4. I'm doing Bucks 3. And as tempted as I am to overblow myself here, I'm gonna put my, my Panthers at 2 and pay my respects to Andy at Falcons 1.
Okay. Okay. I am. Oh, man. Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with that. I think I just think you have the developmental advantage over the Bucks right now, because I think you'll probably have a few of your young guys develop. I think it'll be Saints 4, Bucks 3, Panthers 2, and Andy 1. I think we're agreeing on there. And that's the NFC South. Let's go now to the NFC North. Let's start with the Chicago Bears. This is Robbie's team, another veteran GM. What do you got here? 3-word game.
Yeah, this can be a quick one. 3 words. The levee broke. Uh, the rebuild has begun in full force in Chicago. You know, we've got a good GM there who's going to get them going the right direction, but this
Yeah.
is not the year that they're going to win.
Yeah, yeah. I just don't think there's much to say. There's not much on this team, and so it's going to be a long year. Let's move on now to the Detroit Lions. This is Bushma's team here. What do you got about the Lions here?
I have a perception of the Lions as a team that does well every year, but again, kind of struggles to score those top end points that you might think to beat a good team. The 3 words for them I picked was 200 points weekly. I think that's what they'll do. I think
Yeah.
they will, put up enough points to win the average week, and I think they'll probably end up with 8 or 9 wins, like they seemingly always do.
Yeah, this is Bushma's team. He always does this. He kind of swings for the fences. He makes lots of trades, and he has this interesting knack of you look at his team one day and you're like, whoa, this team looks terrible. And then like a month later, you're like, wait a minute, how did he just rebuild this thing and make it fairly competitive? He does that quite a bit. I've seen that a few times. I think in what is one of the weaker divisions, in my opinion, while this roster I wouldn't consider it overly strong, there is enough talent here to possibly challenge for this division. We'll see what the other 2 GMs do, but with the Bears already being a complete rebuild, I think the Lions are going to be one of the favorites to possibly win this division again. Let's move on now to the Green Bay Packers roster. 3-word game. What do you got?
Finally, some relief. Green Bay has fallen apart. I think we've all recognized that the last kind of years since they won the Super Bowl. We got a hungry GM back in the league in Derek, and he's done some excellent work, I think. And what needed to happen with this was so obvious. He just needed to trade some of those expiring top end players for some younger guys.
Yeah.
Flatten out the roster a little bit and get some depth. And mission accomplished. Yeah, he has 0 cap room left. He's exactly on the cap, which is hilarious. But he's got a quarterback of the future and a currently injured JJ McCarthy. For now, he's got Sam Darnold playing there. Is it the best roster in the league? No, but I think they're a lot scarier than people might give them credit for off of kind of historic opinion of the Packers. And I think Derek's done an excellent job. I love it this year.
This roster is totally different than what it was just a year or 2 ago. And honestly, in a weaker division, this could be all he needs really to earn a division title. Obviously, we'll take a look at the Vikings here, but so far, this looks like the strongest division to me. Derek's done a great job. I mean, listen, I think he has some future concerns, right? I think, Alvin Kamara's long-winded. Sam Darnold, we'll see if he keeps that job. But like you said, he's got, he's J.J. McCarthy in the wings. The Christian Watson pickup was very interesting. We'll see if that pans out, if he can stay healthy. But, with DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel have a role. This is not a bad team. I think it's not the strongest team, but in this division, it's solid. And so got to give Derek credit for taking a complete crap storm and really turning this organization around. So, and finally, the Minnesota Vikings, the controversial Minnesota Vikings. So, 3-word game.
I've got a sage message for the league on this one, and that is patience of virtue. I love the way this team is constructed. I think it's coming together in a really nice way. I think they've got some, guys who could be genuine superstars that were not on this roster 2 years ago. And once again, you're looking at a team with a lot of picks next year. I think patience has been the game here. This hasn't been an aggressive rebuild where, Sanjul was going out there and trying to, grab guys and compete right away. I think he was, to some chagrin, willing to take some bumps and earn those high draft picks and kind of take good players with that. But he's getting some of those guys that he wanted in the positions where they need to be. And, obviously there's too many holes for me to, say that the Vikings are going to win the division this year by any means, but it's heading in the right direction. And they could be pretty scary with all this young talent if it develops well over the next 2 years.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's young talent. I love the Malik Neighbors pickup. We'll see if Jalen Polk works out in New England. I love Jalen Polk's talent. It's always New England, and receivers go to die there. But he definitely got the talent. If the Drake May and the offense can improve over there, the future looks bright. He's got a bunch of picks. And listen, this is a rebuild, right? This is kind of like step 2 of a rebuild, is what it feels like. Won't win a lot of games, but again, just like the Saints, looks like headed in the right direction. So let's call it 4 through 1. What do you got?
Bears 4, Vikings 3. I think those two probably make plenty of sense. It's tough between the Lions and Packers. I was kind of waffling on this a little bit, and I'm so tempted to say Green Bay, but I think I'm still going to go with the Lions, number 1.
Yeah. It's a tough call. Again, I haven't seen these rosters in a while, and it's kind of shocking how much the Packers have improved, right? I will go Packers 2 and Lions 1 because I believe Bushma is not done making moves. He's never done making moves, and I think in order to try and win a division title, he'll do what he has to do, and I think he's pretty fluid. I think he's a smart GM as well, too, though I would not be shocked if it came out with Packers 1 and Lions 2. But I think overall it's a pretty weak division, and so I don't think we got any wild card team coming out of this division, but I could be wrong. So we will see. All right, NFC West, let's start off with the Arizona Cardinals. And I got to say this, rumor has it, Jesse, that the entire NFC is going to be chasing the Cardinals all the way to the conference title. That's what rumor has it. What's your 3-word game, buddy?
Yep, that's what I'm seeing on the chat. Absolutely. 3-word game for this one, better not jam. They've got AR-15 at quarterback, and I think that is an exciting and scary position to be in if you're gunning for a championship. As a Florida fan, I have not got it in me to trust Anthony Richardson, but I know that if Graham was on here, he would be singing his praises and ready to say that he's got a top quarterback, and he very well may. But that he just scares me, and I think he needs him to do what people think he can do if he's going to be a championship team this year. I think there's some work elsewhere on the roster still. I don't think the running backs are quite up to snuff with the rest of the kind of the top teams. But there's definitely a lot of good talent, a lot of young talent. And because of, the fact that we have a GM here that's willing to churn the roster and get the best kind of, bottom 25% of the roster that he can possibly get, I don't think you're ever going to be seeing zeros go into the starting lineup when you're playing the Cardinals, which is, you can count on that with some other teams. I don't think you can with the Cardinals. So dangerous. I don't know if I'm ready to crown him yet.
All right. Listen, I'm looking at that receiving unit, and it looks tremendous. It's young. It's deep. It's definitely the strongest element of this team. And I think that receiving unit will push for a division title, will push for a playoff spot. That is for sure. I will give the Cardinals that much. When I look up and down the roster, we'll see Tyjae Spears, what kind of role he has. I think he'll get some production there. Maybe Carson steals some production there. But the running backs are a little shallow, a little weak there. And so we'll see. Brock Bowers, does he step up? That was the big pickup, of course, of the draft. I'm a skeptic of the Raiders. Okay, and it's not a Brock Bowers issue; it's a Raiders issue, right? It
Yeah.
seems like many careers go to die in Oakland, not just fantasy, but real life careers. As I'm not the biggest Raiders fan. I'm on record as a Rams fan. From back in the days when we were both in LA. But the Raiders have been a crap show for 40 years. The real life Raiders. So we'll see. Tremendous talent. I know Sean McVay and the Rams were trying to move up to grab Brock Bowers, which I would have suggested to the Raiders organization should have traded down with the Rams, so the Rams could have got him because the Rams could have actually used them effectively.
Yeah.
But we will see, right? We will see. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. I think the problem here is defensively, there's some holes here. Gonna need Luca Van Ness to really step up, and I think he could. They're going to a 4-3 base in Green Bay, and that's going to help. Jalen Phillips has got to be healthy. I'm looking at these linebackers. He picked up Trenton Simpson, right, but gave up a good receiver to get him. I think Trenton's going to be good, but those linebackers, Leo Chanel, maybe. I think those linebackers still a little weak. Corners fine, and safety's kind of weak there. This is a powerful lineup at certain positions, but there's holes. And we'll see what Gremlin does. So there you go. That's my analysis. Let's go now to the defending division champs, Brian's team, the San Francisco 49ers. What do you got here? 3-word game.
Brian found gold. I think this was a good roster when he took it over. And I know, I've been in leagues with Brian for a long time, mainly his baseball league. I know the kind of mind he has and the kind of analytics that he puts into these games. And I think he's done nothing but mine out all the value that he has on this roster, bring in good rookies. I think that is an absolutely fearsome lineup. And I think they'll continue to get better because I think Brian's going to continue to get all the value he can out of this team.
Yeah, I think Brian, as I've observed him as a division rival, very shrewd. The trade he made last year with the Saints to pick up Raheem Morris was just brilliant on his part. And that's what really gave him the division title last year, just that year by most. I mean, he has a good team. I think the Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams 1-2 combo is tremendous. I do believe though he needs one or two of these receivers to really develop. I think running back, he's actually good. Tight end, listen, he doesn't got Hawk for the first few games. Is that going to adversely affect him? Possibly. I think the problem with this roster is some positions have to develop. He's got some great players on offense, right? Adams, Chase, good running backs, but without the tight end, ultimately, and really another a number 3 receiver that I don't see, it could be a little short. Now, I think you can run 3 running backs. That could be a saving grace with Ty Chandler up there and Jaylen Warren. And so this team is going to be powerful. He's solid at quarterback. This offense is going to be good. I just think he needs to bring in one more receiver, and then I think he could be unbeatable in the division, to be honest with you. I'm looking at his defense here. Listen, I mean, he's got Jonathan Allen, Calais Campbell should have one more year in him. That's solid. I'm looking at defensive ends. He lost a bunch of his defensive end, bunch of guys on 1-year contracts. But if Matt Jundon is healthy, Barron and Jundon together should be fine. Linebackers, he's absolutely loaded. Corners, he's great.
Yeah.
Safeties, very solid. This is a good roster. This may be the best roster in the division overall. I do believe that Gremlin's team, the Cardinals, has those big young receivers. I do believe the Cardinals are the team in the future in the NFC West, but I believe the 49ers are the best team in this division for right now. So we'll go from there. Let's see here. We'll go to my LA Rams. 3-word game. What do you got, buddy?
Guts, glory, Rams. There's a lot of Rams on the roster. I know you get flack for it, Frank.
I know.
I know. It's fun that way. I respect it entirely. And the fact is, you're not a fan of a bad team. So guess what? You might as well have all these guys. If they're going to produce, they might as well produce for you. So I respect it. I love it. And, I think it's fair to say you had maybe a little bit of a down year last year compared to where you usually are, but the roster is there. I mean, Antonio Gibson is going to get plenty of run, I think, in New England. I think you're only starting one running back with this team, and it's Antonio
Yep.
Gibson. I'm in the same position in Dynasty, and I feel comfortable with it for the most part. I think Gibson will give you good points every week. Might not be a ton, but it'll be respectable. And then down the roster, this is just a good team. And one of my favorite things I liked about your construction was I looked at the corners and I was like, oh, that's a little weak. But then you look at who you actually have, and it's Quinyon Mitchell and Andrew Phillips.
Yeah.
Those might be two of the highest scoring rookie corners in all of the NFL this year. And, every other position is healthy to excellent. So, I know, you might be tempted to discount the team a little bit since it's yours, but Amari Cooper, Lad McConkey is going to play well. Puka, of course. Adam Thielen, there's a lot of really good players there. So, and obviously
Yeah.
good GM there too. He could make some moves if he needs to shore up any positions.
Well, I appreciate that. I think with my squad, the way I look at my squad is that I think it's one of the most complete teams in this league, with the exception of the running back position. That's just always hard. But I do got something there with Antonio Gibson. I think this team could challenge in the NFC if a few players develop, right? There's a few players I targeted. Andre Lasivas looks like he's going to be the number 3 in Cincinnati, but really not too much production historically. I don't know what's going to happen with Jonathan Mingo in Carolina. I still like Mingo. We'll see if he gets a shot. Josh Reynolds has moved up the depth chart ever since Tim Patrick left. I'm hearing great things about Parker Washington. They're saying in Jacksonville, they don't know how they're going to keep him off the field, even though they got the big 3 in front of him. And Johnny Wilson just has a lot of potential here. Listen, there's no secret here. I've had a balanced mix of veterans and youth, and there's lots of youth. And I'm the guy sitting here saying to myself, if this stuff develops, this team could be really, really good. And that's what it comes down to. And it's a deep team at every position. The mistake I made last year, it was such a strange year. I mean, what killed me last year was I did lose Justin Jefferson, and that was a killer. And then one of my main defensive players. And I made a mistake. I didn't address defensive line last year, at least defensive ends. And I got virtually no points week in and week out from defensive ends. I think I've addressed that problem along with depth, linebacker depth, corner depth, safety depth. May not be the top guys at their positions, but it's deep. And in the NFC, which I think is a little weaker than the AFC right now, this could be a playoff team without a doubt. So,
yeah, I love your secondary. I'm very jealous of that secondary, top to bottom.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, Seattle Seahawks. 3-word game.
I've got Stroud, but proud. I think this is another one of those rosters you look at. We've had a couple we've talked about already. CJ Stroud is an absolute monster. I think if I was drafting a quarterback, redrafting an entire league for this league, Stroud might be my first overall pick. Absolutely love him. But he's not passing to anybody in this team. I don't think, their best player on offense, other than Najee Harris, might be Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
It's roster needs some work. It's probably time to kind of take a swing with refreshing this roster.
Yeah, I agree with you. Especially, I believe the NFC West is maybe the best division in the league right now. And that's what's tough. And out of the top 3, Cardinals, 49ers, and Rams, Seattle's not going to be able to compete. And so that's something you got to think about when you're in that situation. And so we'll leave it at that. Okay, I'm going to let you call it here, Jesse, 4 through 1.
Yep. So I'm going Seattle 4. I'm going Cardinals 3. I'm going Rams 2. I apologize. I'm going 49ers 1.
No need to apologize. I respect that. I think that's a good call. But wait a minute, man. You're giving Gremlin's team, Chris's team here 3rd place. He's even going to make the.
I know it.
Let me ask you that.
A pretty good chance of that, I would say.
Okay, so
I'd say pretty good chance there.
2nd or 3rd wild card, then, is what you're calling for Chris's team, right?
He can be 3 behind Carolina. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I call it the same way as you. Though I do think if Gremlin gets busy and improves that defense, I think he could pass me in the standings because those receivers are really, really good that he has over there. And so,
Yep.
but as of now, I think you're right. Seattle 1, Cardinals 2, Cardinals 3, Rams 2, and the 49ers 1, the defending champs. You got to respect that. All right. And finally, NFC East. Let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. That's Frank.
Okay. So we got injury risk collection. This is a scary roster to me. Like everybody on here, I feel like I've, bet on and seen them go down in one way or another. I love Brian Thompson Jr., though. I think he could be a really excellent player for them. Chris Godwin is my favorite player on my favorite team,
Yeah.
but he is a little scary too. He's a very, very aggressive player, and he gets hurt. He gets dinged up as the year goes on. I think right now, week one, if you play them, they could put up some really good points, but I don't see the youth that's backing up the top end players that's going to carry them to kind of late season success. They have good superstars on defense too, but again, it's not a whole lot of depth, and there's not a whole lot of young guys that could step up and kind of provide that depth that you need as the year goes on.
Well, I'll say this much for Frank. He battles every year. He makes moves. I like him as a GM. He inherited this team quite a few years ago, and he's put up. This team has gotten slightly better each year, but this is the first time that I actually see something of substance on offense with those three receivers. Because it's kind of been weird. He's kind of had a quarterback and a running back and like virtually no receivers, right? Kind of that situation, and he's put together a decent offense. It's not. Again, it's a little shallow, as far as roster, not deep, I should say. He's got some decent pieces on defensive end. I like it. He's done a good job to put this thing together. But I think it's just short of possibly competing for this division title. I think it's 2-3 pieces away. I'm confident, though, one of these years, Frank is actually going to get into the playoffs and make a run at this thing. So there you go. That's my analysis. Okay, New York Giants, Al's team. Can I do the 3-word game for Al's team?
Go for it.
A total shit show. Okay. Listen, this team, and I like Al. He's a good guy, nice guy. When I negotiate with him, he's a gentleman, right? Really like him. But he took Anthony's team 2 years ago, the best team in the league, and I'm looking at this roster now, and I'm like, what happened here? Did a nuclear bomb go off? What happened?
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's a lot of players, and one thing, when you look at some of the really like poor roster constructions that we've had in some past years with some players, they have a lot of players that are actual like real life free agents that are never going to score any points.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to give the Giants credit for one thing, I do think that they at least have players that can score some points if they get into the lineup, but they're pretty far down some depth charts. You're looking at guys like Peyton Hendershot and Luke Schoonmaker, they're not starting. So it's going to be hard to get a lot of points on the board. And it's not like they're blue chip players anyway. So it's hard to look at them and think, all right, well, if they just develop, it could be a dangerous team. But they've got Herbert.
Yeah, they got Herbert. Listen, I meant no disrespect to Al. I think, like I said, he's a nice guy. I'm just having some fun here, and this roster has been completely changed and turned over. I think he's taken a different direction to rebuild this thing. I think it's the right thing to do at this point. And so we'll see. I'm confident Al can rebuild this thing. But for now, I think this is the worst team in the division, and I think we can move on now to the Philadelphia Eagles. Give me your 3 words.
So this is another roster that I had to look back a couple times when I was doing the 3 words, and what I came up with was, is it enough? And I think the Eagles were one of the most dangerous teams in the league last year. They were one of those teams that could step up and score a ton of points in any given week, and I think that's going to be the same this week. They still have Lockett, they still have Debo. They still have Austin Eckler, who everyone's acting like is terrible now, but I think he'll be pretty good this year.
Yeah.
Chubb, I believe, is coming back kind of later in the year, and hopefully he'll be, even a fraction of as good as he was. Aaron Jones, it's good. It's a good roster. It's not a team I'd want to play. Ferguson and McBride at tight end is terrifying. but it's one of those where I just look at it and I think about the 49ers and I think about the Bills and some of these other teams, and I'm just not quite sure there's enough there to
Mhm.
beat those teams in a big game where they're on.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many 300-point games we'll see from them, but I think they'll beat everybody they're supposed to beat.
Yeah, I think this team is good enough to possibly win their division because the division is not strong. It's
Yeah.
possibly, if it doesn't win its division, I think it's got a shot at a wild card spot. I'll say that much. Um, if Aaron Jones and Eckler pan out, that's a nice 1-2 punch. He's got Nick Chubb too, as well. If Chubb can be healthy and be the Chubb he was a couple of years ago, that could get interesting. You add that with some decent receivers there, Debo and Lockett. Ferguson at tight end. I don't think this is a bad team at all. Does it compare with the upper echelon teams? I think on any given Sunday he could win without a doubt. But generally, I'm looking at this roster. I'm okay with it actually, and I think there's a strong case to be made here that he could win this division. Obviously, we got to look at one more team, the Commanders. And I like what Joe's done. But I agree with you. Seems like there's one or two pieces missing at the end of the day to really be an elite team. So let's move on now to the Washington Commanders and this Blaine's team. Blaine, man. Blaine makes like a trade every 3 hours in all of his leagues, man.
Mm-hmm.
And so this roster has been overhauled back and forth 10 times in one off season. Okay, so. And that's what you gotta love about Blaine. He lets it fly. But give me your 3-word game on this one.
Yes, I think you'll appreciate this one. It's Blaine gonna Blaine. And what I've been in leagues with him for years now. I mean, probably about 5 years I've been in, leagues with Blaine, and he's one of the more talkative people. I talk to Blaine all the time. I respect Blaine a massive deal. And I feel like I can see into his mind a little bit when I think about his teams. And what I see when I look at this roster, knowing Blaine, is I think he wants to see how Trey Benson gets used. I think he wants to see how Xavier Legette looks. Same with Roman Wilson. Some of these players. Is Jackson Smith and Jigba going to step up and be an all-star this year? I think that's what he's waiting to see. I think he's content to ride out the roster as it is for a couple weeks, maybe, and kind of see how it's looking. And if you click over to that little bio tab, you can see that Blaine has five first-round picks in this upcoming draft.
Yeah,
with the roster and talent that he has, that's an absolutely crazy, treasure trove to have in the back pocket. So I think Blaine is going to decide at some point, week 3, whether he wants to be one of the best teams in Legacy this year, or if he wants to kick it down the can and start over with a massive, extremely fast lightning rebuild and go for it next year as some of his young talent has the rest of the year to develop. So, who knows? It could be a 4-win team. It could be, a 12-win team. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I've known Blaine for a very long time, and I agree with your assessment completely. Blaine struggles he starts with a rebuild, but he wants a win now. I think he's a little impatient, right? And I'm shocked that he still has all these number ones still to him, and I got to give him credit because I think Blaine is learning how to play this game. I think he's always itching to make a deal. How can it compete? How can I go after my division title? Kind of a thing. But listen, just like with Gremlin and the Cardinals, I look at those young wide receivers, and I think Gremlin with his receivers is a year ahead of the Commanders here, of Blaine's team. I'm looking at these young receivers. If they all develop, Blaine's going to dominate this division for the next 3 to 5 years. That's my take on this, right? Because he's got talent all across the board as well, too, on defense. I mean, look at those defensive ends. That's insane, right? I mean, even his linebackers, pretty decent. He's got corners. This really could come together this year. If it does, it could be a dangerous team, playoff team, championship team. I think he's a year away. I'll say that much. I think guys like Legette need a year. Jackson Smith and Ninja, he needs a year. I thought the Michael Wilson pickup was very shrewd. Roman Wilson, I'm not sure what kind of role he has in Pittsburgh, but this is exciting team to see. This is a rebuild he started about 2 years ago, and we're like in step like 3 out of 4 for his rebuild. And I'm looking at the Commanders being a powerhouse starting next year. Kind of like the way we look at Anthony's team or over in the AFC. I think Blaine is kind of getting there, right? A different route, a youth route, but this is a strong team, and I think this is why this division is going to be hard to call because we don't know what we're going to get from the Commanders. But I'm going to give you a crack shot at it, Jesse.
All right. So, 4, I'm going to go with the Giants. And I think they're better than some other, 4th-ranked teams, but, I think that's where they'll be this year because I think Dallas has a better team. I think they're, again, a pretty strong 3. It's not a bad division, really.
No, it's not, actually.
Second place, I am going to go with Washington. And, part of it is I'm pricing in the possibility that Blaine does just choose to kick it down the road and get even more first-round picks and kind of build around them next year. But the main reason for that is because when I look at it, I agree with you. I think guys like Xavier Legette and, Roman Wilson and even Jackson Smith and Jigba probably just need one more year to kind of have those depth charts clear out in front of them just a little bit. And I think it might be wishful thinking to think that they'll just, step up and dominate year one. I think there's just a little bit more work that needs to be done there for them in real life. And then Eagles, I'm going 1. I think they deserve it. I think they'll take it. Again, Joe is a very active GM, and I think he's willing to plug any holes that he needs to keep that number 1 spot throughout the year, especially if Washington is making these trades. I think Joe's going to load up.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's exactly my assessment. I think Joe's team is the most, how should I put this? It's the most complete for now, right? Until Washington's roster, we get a little bit more clarity with its young talent. Though I'm not ruling out that if it all comes together for the Commanders, that they could win this division. But I think it's Joe. He's got a pretty solid team. He's a good GM. He always puts a competitive team up. Yeah, and I think it's the Eagles with the Commanders. And so, we've done all 32 teams. How about we do a little conference predictions here? Let's start in the AFC.
Oof, yeah.
Let's do it this way. You got Bills as a playoff team, right? Win the division. I think we called. Who did we call in the AFC West? Was it the Broncos or the Chiefs?
Kansas City.
So Bills, Kansas City. We call the Colts in the South, and we called the Browns in the North. Who are the 3 wild card teams?
Let's see. I think I'm going to take the Raiders for 1. I think they'll get 1. Tennessee is obvious. I think they'll get 1 as well. Which kind of leaves it open for that 3rd one.
I think Ravens 3rd. Ravens.
I think I was looking at Ravens and I was looking at Denver. I think one of them will probably take the 3rd wild card.
Okay, I agree with you. And who's going to win it?
Oh, man, it is so tough between the Colts and Giants on paper right now. I said Giants again. I mean Bills. I'm not doing that on purpose, I promise.
Anthony confuses everybody. Moving over to the Bills. I got you.
Yeah, it is so tough. I mean, I think both of those rosters are about as, as stacked as it can get in a 32-team league. And I'm going to take the Colts by a hair.
Ooh, interesting call. Obviously, we can't predict injuries, and that's usually the factors when it comes to the playoffs in these leagues. But I think the Bills are number 1. I think the Bills are just a juggernaut. I think it's their conference, and they'll probably be the favorite right now to win the whole league. But you know what? Stranger things happen in playoffs, as we saw, quite a few times in this league, but especially last year. Let's call the NFC. So NFC, we got the Falcons 1. We got, I believe, the Lions won, we got the 49ers won, and we got the Eagles won. Who are the 3 wild cards?
I'm gonna take Arizona and the Rams, and then me.
Okay.
I gotta give myself something.
There you go, man. I got you. Yeah. Yeah, I got to be completely objective here, buddy, right?
Yeah, right.
I will give the wild cards. I would give the wild cards. See, the thing with the AFC, the NFC West is we're all going to beat up on each other over there. That's the issue.
That's true.
If the 49ers wins division, where does that leave the Rams and the Cards? I think the head-to-head matchups between Rams and Cards are going to be monstrous. And it very well could be that one of those teams gets pushed out. But that being said, I do believe that Rams and Cardinals are the 2 best potential wild card teams in this conference. And then I'm looking at, I got to go with, you know what, is between your Panthers and the Commanders.
Agreed.
I'm going to go with Commanders, Jesse. I hate to break your heart. I'm going to go with
That's
Commanders.
fine. I respect it and probably soberly agree.
I go with Commanders because they have the potential with that youth to really do something magical. That's what I'm going to call it. Who wins the conference?
Yeah. I'm still gonna go San Fran.
San Fran, huh?
I'm doing it.
Okay. Listen, they're defending champs. They deserve all the respect in the world. You know what? I'm going to call an upset here.
Yeah, do it.
I'm going to call an upset here. I'm going to call the Eagles win the conference. I know they're missing
I respect it. They could. I respect it. They could.
Listen. What we saw last year with the Falcons, Andy's team, you know, like I said, anybody gets in the playoffs in this thing, anybody could win it all. He's going to win the division. May get a bye because everybody's going to beat up on each other in all the other divisions. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Even with the 49ers, right, as the best team in the conference, right, I believe right now, got to face the Cardinals twice, got to face the Rams twice, and then because he won division last year, he's got a first-place schedule. He's got a tough schedule. And so if the Eagles can command their division, if he can beat the Cowboys, sweep the Cowboys, I know he's going to sweep the Giants. Are the Commanders ready to compete day one? I'm not sure. But I'm going to just do a kind of a Atlanta Falcons 2023, call a complete upset, because I believe the NFC is wide open. I believe some good teams, but you don't have the same caliber as the AFC for now. I'm calling the upset just to change it up a little bit. I'm calling the Eagles, buddy. Okay, my friend, that covers it. Jesse, buddy, thanks for joining me. You're doing a great job running this league, by the way. All respect to you. As usual, I think Legacy is just a notch above every other league, and I'm excited for the year. Any final thoughts?
No, I appreciate it, Frank, and you know, I mean, you know, honestly, we all kind of run the league. You know, I mean, we get input from everybody, and you know, I think everybody has an opinion. It's definitely an opinionated league, and I love that about it. So, you know, I'm glad to be in a league with you guys, and I love competing with y'all.
All right, buddy. Thank you, man. Hey, great job, guys. I'm looking forward to the season, engaging with everybody. It's always a fun league. Like I said, for so many years in Legacy, it's not just we're just, you know, competitors. We're all friends at this point. That's what makes it fun, you know, to have these social outlets and to celebrate the greatest game in the world, which is NFL football. It's special. These leagues are very special. I think Legacy is one of the better ones. It's been around, I think, year 10. I believe we're in 10 or 11 now. That's pretty awesome. And we're going to leave it at that. Once again, Jesse, I want to thank you, Mish. Thank you for joining me. Have a good night, my friend.
Yes, sir. Same to you.
All right. This is Frank. Sign off for Legacy NFL Live. Good night, everybody.